Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Wednesday, about half the work week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Jacob Beck and Jordan Kitchens back there on the ones and twos, and we got lots to do for 2 hours. Is the Saints' best potential draft pick going to be there at 9? We'll talk about that in the next segment. It's What If Wednesday. There are a lot of those flying around on Twitter right now, so we'll get to a lot of that. The SEC has set a lot of records in this NCAA basketball tournament. Touch on that a little bit at the end of the hour. LSU has gone shopping in the portal again for basketball. The women's team has seen one of its contributors leave today in basketball, and then the SEC baseball power rankings coming up at 2:30. So lots and lots and lots to do. Lock us in until 3 o'clock. Let's start today the same way we start every day, with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
LSU just keeps playing great baseball in the midweek. There's really no other way to say it. They're 10-0 in the midweek and really have not even potentially stubbed their toe. There was a clunker of an early game against North Dakota State, but outside of that, it's really been rock solid. And last night was more of that for this LSU baseball team. I thought they were really, really good in every phase of the game last night. I thought the pitching got off to a nice start. William Schmidt, Cooper Williams, and Maverick Rizzi combined to throw the first 6 innings of the game. That's 3 freshmen who have not necessarily excelled on the weekend, but have massive potential and need innings. And while you could have watched last night and saw William Schmidt start a midweek game and throw 51 pitches and said to yourself, hey, Jay Johnson said 3 weeks ago his days of pitching in the midweek are over around here. Well, here's the deal. William Schmidt needs to pitch. And if you don't feel like you can go to him in the 7th inning of a tight SEC game right this second, which is fine, he needs to pitch in the midweek. He needs to get innings. And really, as much as I would like to hold him for the weekend against Oklahoma, like, he needs innings. So, yes, I did sit here 2.5 weeks ago and told you, like, yeah, they don't need to burn him on Tuesdays. You don't need to develop a 4th starter. That's not an important thing. You need to have those guys ready to go out of the bullpen in league play. I can change my tune a little bit, just a little bit, based on the last 2.5 weeks of information, which tells me William Schmidt's not getting enough innings to improve. It's one thing to do it on the side mound. It's one thing to do it off flat ground. It's one thing to do it in the bullpen. It's one thing to do it on the mound in a game. And that's what you needed to see from William Schmidt last night. And the line's not going to blow you away. 2 2/3 innings, 3 hits, an earned run, a walk, and 2 strikeouts. But it was just watching the outing looked good. He came out early in the game and threw strikes. He threw a lot of fastballs, which I enjoyed. Like, just go challenge him. You don't need to be too cute. You don't need to throw a ton of 2-0 breaking balls. You don't need to throw a ton of first pitch breaking balls. You can mix those in. It's plenty good enough. But go challenge guys. It's Louisiana freaking Tech. And he did that for the most part. Now, he gives up the 1 home run that Ruddle really got up into the jet stream out to left field. I would consider that probably a pop-up. But it went out of the ballpark. It counts. But I thought that Schmidt was good. I thought that Williams came in and also threw a good amount of strikes. He got through 2 innings of shutout baseball with 23 pitches. He did issue 2 walks. I thought he was a little bit more competitive than I've seen him at other points. So I liked those 2 guys' outings. I thought that Maverick Rizzi was just fine as well. He threw an inning and a third, just gave up 1 hit. So that's your pitching getting off to a good start. I thought then LSU offensively, kind of what they've done. I mean, they didn't do like they did to ULL. They scored 9 runs in the first inning, but they came out and scored 4. You get a walk from Curiel, which you're so used to seeing now at the top. Jones doesn't force it. He draws a walk. Dickinson rifles a double down in the corner in left field. A little bit later in the inning with 2 outs, see Cade Arambidi once again coming up with a really nice swing. He's taking a massive amount of advantage of his midweek starts. We talked about it yesterday entering the game. You saw it again in the game on Tuesday night. They want Luis Hernandez to catch on the weekends. That's awesome. He's their best option. He's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. His defense has really improved since February. He should be the guy. But Cade Arambidi is the future of that position. And it would be a little bit short-sighted to just sit him on the bench. So 2 things about him playing. 1, he gets the opportunity to get out there and get the reps. And 2, Luis Hernandez can rest in the midweek. And he did. And Arambidi comes up with a 2-out, 2-run single up the middle. Big time swing for him. He did strike out 3 times, but you go back over the course of the last 3 midweek games where he has started, he's got 5 hits and 8 runs driven in over those 3 games. That's really good stuff from Cade Arambidi, so I was thrilled to see that as well. So LSU got off to a 4-0 start. Jared Jones sinks down into his knees and drives one out of the ballpark in the 2nd inning for a home run. You saw another 4 spot in the 7th there. You look at it statistically speaking for LSU. In the game, Ethan Fry was probably the biggest story of the game. He tattooed another home run, right home run, I might add, which is something you saw him do over the weekend. You saw him take out Pico Khan with the home run. It's his left on right. Like, you've seen him really excel no matter the situation they put him in. He's going to make it very difficult to take him out of the lineup. Last night, his final line, 3 of 4 on the night, 4 runs driven in. And he scored a couple times. So awesome work from Ethan Fry in the game. And Daniel Dickinson continues to hit. He was 2 for 4 with the double we talked about, scored 2 runs, was awesome in the ball game. So that is your look at it from a defensive perspective and an offensive perspective, and LSU didn't make an error. So you got a good job from your pitching early in the game. The offense took control, and then you didn't do anything careless or sloppy. You made the plays that you needed to play on the defensive side. So I thought that LSU was just excellent from start to finish in this game. Louisiana Tech has won 3 weekends in a row. They had won 7 of 10. They've been a pretty functional ball club this season. They're not great. There have been better Tech teams. I mean, Tech has been a team that hosted a regional. So you've seen better teams than this in Ruston, but it's a team that on a given Tuesday can really put up a fight, and they didn't. And Louisiana Lafayette is a team that on a given Tuesday can put up a fight, and they didn't last week. I mean, UNO is playing good baseball this year. Couldn't put up a fight against LSU. And that's what you want to see. I talked about this yesterday, and I'll continue to say this, even though there's nothing to back it up with this team. Statistically speaking, you're going to lose one of these games, but you don't want to lose 5. And LSU has done such a good job in the midweek to this point of being a team that now 10-0 in the midweek, that you've given yourself some insurance. If for some reason over one of the next 2 or 3 midweeks, you go out there and walk 6 guys and kick it 3 times, and then they hit 2 home runs, well, that is happening to a lot of teams. Texas was on the rope last night. I actually didn't even check to see if they lost that game. But you saw 2 weeks ago, Tennessee got tripped up in the midweek. Let's see if Texas actually came back and won that. They were down by 3 in the 8th inning, I know. And then I stopped tuning in to the Texas State game. They did end up losing 5-3. So that's a team that's played great baseball. They just went up to Missouri and swept. You know that they beat LSU 2 out of 3 of the week prior to that. They went to Starkville and swept, and they just came out in a game against Texas State and didn't swing the bats. So like it happens, and it has not happened to this LSU team to this point. I mean, there's already a regional projection that's come out today. Baseball America had theirs. LSU was the 5 national seed. D1 Baseball was doing theirs as I came on the air, but it's live on YouTube, so I was looking at it, and they had LSU as the 8th national seed. Like, as y'all well know, you've put yourself in a great position right now. One midweek loss here or there is not going to do much to alter that, but it is nice to just continue to see LSU consistently go out there and handle their business in the midweek. Because I'll tell you this, and this is a little bit too far in advance, but just something that I consider as you look at the future for this team. When we talk about LSU baseball, we talk about getting to a regional and hosting a regional. We talk about being a top 8 seed, playing in a super, getting to Omaha, and that's something we discuss in January around here, February, and certainly now as we've gotten into April. It's just the way that we frame our conversations. If they do something like last year and they go out there and they start 3-12, well, we change the conversation. But more often than not, we're talking about how to position yourself for the postseason, right? And that's something that I think is a reasonable conversation to have about this team. And the team that comes in here, if and when LSU is a host and is that 4 seed, is going to look a lot like Louisiana Tech potentially. Is going to look a lot like Louisiana Lafayette potentially. Is going to look a lot like New Orleans potentially. And the fact that LSU has consistently gone out there and handled their business against those teams gives you a good feeling. Does not mean you're going to dominate the first time out in the regional when it actually counts. But it's just, I think about all these things in passing as the season progresses. It's just part of the 56-game grind that you go through. And yeah, we put a ton of emphasis, and for good reason, on what you do on the weekend. We put a ton of emphasis in what your conference record is, what your conference standing is, for good reason. We look at RPI and all that kind of stuff that goes into it. But just one of the things that I look at is how are you handling your business against guys that don't throw 96 with big sliders. It's a different level of pitching that you're looking at. And LSU consistently is going out there, especially in the first inning, and going to work. I mean, putting up big run totals against ULL, big run totals in the game last night. And that's what you like to see from this team. It's more important how they play the next 3 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Norman, than what we saw last night. However, it's just something to file away as we inch toward the postseason here. So LSU gets a nice win over Louisiana Tech. Tigers scored 12 runs on 9 hits without an error. Louisiana Tech, 3 runs on 7 hits. They did make 1 error. Just a side note there, cool little moment for Zeb Ruddle, as I mentioned, and then Brody Dross, both those two guys, former LSU Tigers who were here. Zeb Ruddle for 2 years, Brody Dross for 2 years. Those two guys, each homer in their return to the box in a different color uniform. I guess I'll mention the uniform briefly. Just an embarrassment that Tech would go out there in those uniforms. They had Ruston over the front like they were the American Legion Summer League team. I don't even like the Stars and Stripes thing they had going on. Louisiana Tech, very sneakily, has great colors and a great logo. I love the Louisiana with the T on it. I think Louisiana Tech's got great aesthetics. Last night they looked awful, and they paid for it. I doubt it was the uniforms that got them beat last night. It was probably the team in the pinstripes. But in any event, Tech did not look the part last night. They're just putting rust. If LSU ever came out in Baton Rouge on the front of their uniform, I wouldn't care for that very much. But here we are. All right, that's a look at LSU baseball. That's our Genesis opening drive. There's one guy the Saints could pick at 9 that I think would be better than any other pick they could make. I saw that they're bringing him in for a visit. Is it possible that they could take him at 9? We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Vaughn and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. When I say remodel, a lot of people back, I'm like, oh, God, that sounds really expensive. And you can do a really expensive remodel. That's certainly a possibility. But it doesn't have to be a really expensive, really invasive, and time-consuming remodel. Things like tub-to-shower conversions can be done very, very quickly with David Duvall and his team. You take out that tub that you never use, it's dingy and old. Maybe it doesn't even work anymore because it's an older house, and you want to put something in that's fresh, that's new, that's clean, that's aesthetically pleasing and functional. Put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower. You can do that. If you got one of those bathrooms that maybe was very popular in the 80s and 90s that has the big, huge jacuzzi tub and maybe the small stand-in shower, and you don't really like the room in that shower even though you use it all the time, well, go ahead and turn that into a closet, which is a great linen closet, and then take that tub out, put a shower in. These are the kind of things that you can do that don't take a ton of time, don't have to be prohibitively expensive. David Duvall and his team are happy to walk you through the entire process. Start that process at OneBathAndClosets.com today. Get that free consultation. David Duvall will tell you how that process works when he sits down with you. And he'll do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's One Bath and Closets, and you can find him online at OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Chugging right along here, Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. What If Wednesday coming up in about 15 minutes. If you've got some what ifs, hit me on Twitter at HuntPalmer88. We've already got a number of those in there. And then, of course, in the Bayou Ford chat, we are always happy to hear from you. I'm sure we'll hear from you in about 40 seconds when I go into this Saints topic, because that's generally how things go in the Bayou Ford chat. As y'all know, the NFL allows you to bring in a number of draft prospects for visits in the lead up to the draft. And the Saints are certainly doing a lot of homework. We've talked a ton about the Saints and what they've done from a quarterback perspective, but there are other players that obviously the Saints are bringing in and heavily considering. And the one that caught my eye today is a visit that the Saints are going to take, I believe, is the best possible scenario for the New Orleans Saints in this draft. that includes every player on the board. All of them. And it's because of the position he plays, that current depth chart on the Saints roster, and the spot where the Saints pick. I think it is the best case scenario. And before I get to the name and get to the position and get to the reasons why I think this, I think it's important that I start with a caveat that I don't think he's going to be there when the Saints pick. That's just the reality of the situation. The Saints are at 9. It feels like you probably need to be closer to 5 to get there. And before we get to talking about him, I don't favor the Saints trading up for him. While I think he is the best fit for New Orleans, I don't favor trading up because I do not believe the Saints are in a position to mortgage draft picks, to give away draft picks, to get rid of assets for one player. You need to take as many young, cheap players as you can. And getting rid of them, no matter if they're second or third round picks, is just not the way the Saints need to operate. So with that out there, the Saints are bringing in Mason Graham, Michigan defensive tackle, for a visit. And I think this would be a grand slam of a pick for the Saints. Why do I say that? Well, one, it's just the prospect, right? Like, he is considered a top 5 player by just about every draft analyst that you look at. He's a guy that was massively productive at Michigan in his time there. If you turn on the tape of his performance against Ohio State this past season, we all realize just how good Ohio State was this year, right? You look at that tape, he was wrecking the Buckeyes. Wrecking them at the point of attack. And you look at, first of all, the Saints. And while Brian Brzee has really good numbers and production from a sacks perspective, he's not great against the run. Now, he can get there. He's a third-year player. But he's not great against the run right now. You look at Colin Saunders in the last year of his deal. Yeah, you brought in Devon Godshaw, but that's not a guy that you expect to be a long-term fix at the position. He's up there in age and has been a little bit declining. So you have a need at defensive tackle to pair with Brian Brzee to be a run stopper. And Mason Graham is thought as the best run stopper in this draft. And then you just consider what's important in the league. And one of the things that the really good teams have is just elite interior defensive line play. You look at the Chiefs and what Chris Jones does to opposing teams. And I'm not telling you that Mason Graham is a lot to be Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a multi-time All-Pro. But guys that go in the first 10 picks of the draft, a lot of times are considered potential multi-time All-Pros. You look at what the Eagles did to the Saints in week 3 with Jalen Carter. They couldn't block him. They could not run their offense because they could not handle Jalen Carter. And that was when the Saints were looking good on offense. And again, I'm not telling you that Mason Graham's guaranteed to be as good as Jalen Carter, but they come from the same profile. Massively productive interior defensive linemen from big-time football powers, national championship pedigree. That's what you're talking about. When you talk about Mason Graham, that's what you're talking about when you talk about Jalen Carter. Graham finished this past season with 45 tackles, 7 for a loss, 3.5 sacks, pass batted at the line. And I think if the Saints could get him, that would be a better pick to me than if Cam Ward fell to 9. Now, one, and Cam Ward has got a bigger upside because he's a quarterback. He's also got a way lower floor because he's a quarterback. I think that Graham has a really, really high floor and a really, really high ceiling. And he plays a position the Saints need desperately. These guys are hard to find. Yes, the Saints need wide receiver help. Yes, the Saints need help at safety. Yes, the Saints need to look to plug holes on the interior of their offensive line. They've got to get more linebackers. They just don't have enough linebackers. They've got to find someone to rush the passer. We talk about this almost every day. There are needs all over the field. But a great place to start rebuilding your football team, which that's what the Saints are doing. Whether they want to say it or not, it's a fact. A great place to start would be the defensive interior. And it's far, far easier to find someone to go play wide receiver or find someone to go play safety or find someone to go play running back than it is to find someone to be a game changer at defensive tackle. Like, that is just a tough, tough place to find a guy. Chris Jones, first-round pick. Aaron Donald, first-round pick. Jalen Carter, first-round pick. Like, these guys a lot of times come from the top of the draft. And it doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to be a star. But I just like the idea of the Saints finding Mason Graham and him falling into their lap at 9 and him being a transformational piece on their defense. If you don't know Graham's story, he was a 3-star recruit. Michigan inked and developed. And that's how they became a national championship level program, by finding and developing elite offensive and defensive linemen. I mean, that team that won the national championship, yeah, J.J. McCarthy became a first-round pick. We don't know what he's going to be in the NFL because he's hurt. But that team became what it was for 2 years because they kicked people's butts at the point of attack. Period. And Ohio State knows that better than anybody. And Ohio State's got pros everywhere. And Mason Graham was in the middle of that for the last 2 years for Michigan. So to me, if he somehow, some way got there, if you got teams that got too aggressive, that tried to get in the top 10 to go get a quarterback, and people started backing up, and folks decided they want to go offensive line instead of defensive line, and somehow, some way, he fell into the Saints' lap at 9, which happens every year. Somebody that we think is a top 7 player falls to 12 or 15. It happens every year. If that could happen at 9 for New Orleans, I think that is the best case scenario in this entire draft for the Saints. Just my thoughts on the matter. I got a couple of whodats back there. Mason Graham. 1, can the Saints draft him at 9? Will he be there? And 2, is he the best potential player the Saints could end up with?
Man, I'm going to be honest, Hunt. I like Mason Graham, but the Saints have so many holes, so we just need best available. If he falls,
well, I think he is. Like, he's top 5 on like everybody's big board, and you're picking 9th.
It's just like we have so much holes, and like any pick we take is not going to be an immediate like, okay, good, we needed this, let's move. It's like we have so many holes. Like if anybody falls, I'm like, get him. Let's say Abdul Carter comes out, I don't know, he has a weird tattoo somewhere and he falls in the draft. You know how it always goes. He falls, take him. Like I'm at that point where beggars can't be choosers.
Abdul Carter would be very good. There's no doubt about
beggars
that.
Can't be choosers.
Beck?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me who any of those guys. I would say the only one that I would probably not be happy about is, well,
Shador?
Well, no. I think Ashton Jeanty, even though I think he's a really good player and I think he's going to be a really good running back in the NFL,
yes,
I just don't know that that's what the Saints really. I don't know if that's the position of impact the Saints need to take.
It just feels like if you do your work properly, you can find your starting running back after Kamara in the 5th round.
Yeah,
if you do it right,
easy,
you can.
Now, could he be Saquon Barkley or in terms of impact? Yeah, I think he could be. But still, I think that there's just other positions that you really need to fill before that.
Yeah, I'll say that I'll be disappointed if it's Ashton Jeanty. Any other pick, I've seen so many different guys mocked there. I'm cool with that. A running back, brother, I might lose my mind. I might be like, no way.
That's our Saints look today. If you're looking for our Saints content, Hunt on Saints on YouTube, wherever you find your podcast. Got a lot of what ifs coming in for What If Wednesday. We'll do that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Genesis of Baton Rouge, probably not a place you've been, just statistically speaking. They've only been at their location there, Airline of Piku, for 2 years. If you hadn't been in the market for a vehicle over the last 2 years, but you are now, just put it on your list. Put it on your list to go by, check it out. I promise you will be impressed. You'll be impressed with the dealership, with the facility. It's first class. It feels like a 5-star hotel when you walk in to the showroom. Got incredible ambiance. Got a little rock waterfall there. Service aisle is squeaky clean, got a big old awesome coffee machine in there, and their staff is first class. Their brand ambassadors are great to work with. You get behind the wheel of a vehicle and you see that difference. It's a luxury brand of vehicles at a reasonable price. That's the Genesis model. Every single model from the entry level to the highest end comes with the same safety features, and they've been awarded the entire line IIHA Top Safety Picks, some of them Top Safety Picks Plus. Go by and see them, Airline at PQ. Check out the inventory at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Promise you will not be disappointed. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. Find them online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
LSU's been active in the basketball transfer portal. We talked about their first two editions yesterday. We'll talk another one here in 30 minutes from right now. Straight up 2 o'clock, a little bit of hoops talk. Plus, how much money is the SEC getting from the NCAA tournament? Hint, it's a lot. Talk about that at 1:45. In the second hour, we got our SEC baseball power rankings as well. Not a ton of movement in the SEC power rankings over the weekend. A lot of sweeps will do that. A lot of the bad teams got swept. A lot of the good teams did a lot of sweeping, so we'll talk about it 1 hour from right now. For now, let's go to What If Wednesday.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. Where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Follow me and ponder the question. What if?
All right, first one here. I'm just going to see this one from the chat, and I have to respond to it, okay? Nookie says, what if the chat didn't fall for your invitation to submit what ifs you don't read? How about that? Well, here's the thing, Nookie. When we have over 15 or 20 what ifs and we have a segment that lasts about 10 minutes, we don't have enough time to read every single one. And so I'm going to pick out the ones that I think are good. Like, let's just say, for instance, this one Greg Lehman put in, which he is referencing a couple of cyclists who are professional cyclists.
Yes.
Asking about what if they did some specific type of strategy in cycling. And why on earth would I ever read that?
That's an atrocious
Because
what if to put in the chat by Greg
There is
Lehman.
literally one person who understands that, and that is him. No one
Atrocious.
No one else watches professional cycling. I do watch a little bit because of my father-in-law, but I don't really keep up with it
I think
that
that's
much.
a poor decision by you. You shouldn't even do that to suck up to your father-in-law. It's a stupid thing to watch.
Okay.
It's boring, and nobody wants to care about it.
That's very rude, Hunt. But anyways, we'll move on to the actual what ifs that are worthy of reading.
That have to do with cycling.
The first one, what if the Cubs start going on a winning streak wearing their City Connect
good
jerseys?
uniforms. That's more important
Would
than
you
cycling.
ever be a fan of them wearing those if it almost always resulted in a win? Say they ride them to the World Series. Would you buy and wear a Cubs City Connect jersey, aka the Wrigleyville jerseys, if they win it all?
Okay, so let's start with the back end. No, I would never buy a City Connect uniform.
No.
They're hideous, and I don't buy jerseys, so I'm not gonna wear a jersey. You want to wear a jersey? That's great. I'm not gonna wear a jersey. As far as would I support them wearing them if it resulted in a huge winning streak? No, because they look stupid and it compromises my enjoyment of the game. I dislike when my teams wear stupid stuff. Y'all know this by now. So no, I would not support that because I think they could probably win in the good uniforms if they were winning in the bad uniforms.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that there are many superstitions that are in the game of baseball.
Yes.
And of course, there
And I abide
are
by
probably,
many of them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. And also, it wouldn't shock me to believe or understand that there are many fans who probably look at the records that teams have with their uniforms and say, oh, well, they obviously are going to win because they're wearing the Wrigleyville uniforms today.
Yeah, I don't think
There's a lot of factors that go into whether a team wins. The uniforms don't matter. So I don't care if some random streak happens because they're wearing the Wrigleyville uniforms. It's not why they're winning games. So I would never be a fan of them wearing them, even if they start winning games with them.
That's correct.
So moving on here, what if LSU would have never fired Will Wade.
Hadn't done that one before.
Wow, never had that one. Yeah. Would they be playing for a Final Four this week? And I don't think so. And spare me the narrative that we fired Wade to save football. Okay, well, we all know that's true as well. So I don't really know what we're doing here. But anyways, what if they never fired him?
They would have kept being good. I mean,
Yeah.
I doubt they'd be in the Final Four because not very many teams make the Final Four, and LSU had not proven to that point that they could get to the Final Four. But they would have continued to be good. He had a good team every year. Some of them were elite on offense, some were elite on defense. He never put one together that was really great at both. But I think LSU would have been really good this year if they had never fired him, and they weren't very good this year. So
yeah,
that's that.
And the last part, if saying that if we fired Wade to save football, and if that's true, that's called extortion, and the NCAA would have lost any legal battle that came from that. I don't know that that's really a fair assessment.
Yeah, that's a pretty aggressive way to phrase it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but okay, we'll move on. What if all you... Wait, what is this? Oh, what if you... Okay, I guess they're referencing calling pins and mics as in journalists and radio personalities. Will finally acknowledge that Zion Williams, it's obviously Williamson, is a bust. I'm seeing that you copy these straight from Twitter. And
I did. Just
the people don't
copy
typically
and pasted.
Have much grammar and punctuation.
That one's from Fadinky, who's a huge fan of the show.
Yeah.
Really enjoys me, and certainly does not have anything to do with affiliation with the morning show on Eagle 98.1.
Yeah, really appreciate that guy. 30 out of what will be 82 games Zion will have played this year. Basically, he gets paid for 82 games, but only plays half. That's a good deal for him. What if we acknowledge that Zion Williams is a bust?
Yeah, so I don't think anybody that's writing with pens or talking into a mic is suggesting that Zion Williamson has saved the Pelicans franchise.
Or that he's not a bust, by the way.
I mean, at this point, when he's on the floor, he plays great. He's not on the floor very much. And that's the unanimous consensus from everyone who analyzes the Pelicans. Yep. You can talk about the Pelicans for like 40 minutes a year like me, or you can talk about the Pelicans for 3 hours a week like Jordan. And everyone says the same thing. Zion's really good when he plays, and he never plays.
Yeah,
that's the entire breakdown of his career.
Also, to me, when we're talking about a bust, there are levels of bust. Like there's Greg Oden, who didn't play. He never played. He was a bust. But there's also guys like
Anthony Bennett.
Yeah, Anthony Bennett was a complete bust. He was never good. Zion, I don't know that you can really consider him a bust at this point. Maybe if he continues on this trend of not playing any games, and
we don't even have to say that.
But yeah,
he doesn't play enough.
He doesn't play enough. That's true. But still, the fact that when he plays, he is an amazing player. To me, that would signal that he's not a bust, because I always group guys that were injury prone. Well, I guess I couldn't say it about Greg Oden too, because he was just mainly problems with injuries. Like I don't know if you can really call guys that were bust because they had so many injuries. It's not their fault they kept getting hurt. Well, maybe in Zion's case, you could say that he had some issues with weight and all that, but I still don't know if it's fair to call people who have injuries a bust, because it's not like they weren't good. Zion is clearly a very talented player, worthy of the #1 pick, but it's just he can never play. So I don't know, Jordan, if you have anything to add, but
no, I mean, I wouldn't consider him a bust. I'd more say he's disappointing. He's been very disappointing. Like you said, there's levels to bust. Anthony Bennett, bust. When Zion plays, he's like top 20 easily in the NBA. Like when he's locked in, he's top 20. But the problem is, we need you locked in for 82 games, bro, not 30. So
how about just 65? Maybe I'll be okay with that.
The most he played is 70. So you can give us 70, but this year, sit him down, sit everybody down. We're terrible. Trey Murphy literally tore his labrum in the first 30 seconds of a game. Sit everybody down at this point. They don't need to play, so no.
All right, next one. What if Hunt could choose to change anything he wanted in LSU athletics? That's a very broad one.
Really, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe narrow it down to a sport if you want, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of that's like hypothetical. Like, can I change history, or do I get to? I mean, I think there are a few things that I could think of. Like, Obviously, they need to go forward with a new basketball facility that is modernized and has premium seating and the whole thing, and they're working towards that. But I'd do that really quickly. If you're giving me the magic genie, I'll snap my fingers and make it happen for sure. I think there are significant changes that need to happen at Alex Box Stadium as well. I mean, if you're not talking about I get Joe Burrow for the rest of my life, if like that's the thing I would change about LSU athletics. Like we're talking about in reality and something that's long lasting and impactful. I think facilities are something you could look to immediately, and I would make sure that you've got an up-to-date basketball facility, and then with baseball there, I just think they could have made it a little bit more comfortable for the fans. Like those metal bleachers are tough. Like I'm in the press box every game. Trust me, I would switch with you in the metal bleachers for a few games a year if I could, to go down there and hang out and not be working during every game. But I understand they're not very comfortable. So I think there are some things I would do there.
All right, last one here. What if LSU had hired Kevin O'Sullivan instead of Jay Johnson?
I'm glad that they didn't. I was lukewarm on that whole deal when it was going on. I mean, LSU vetted Kevin O'Sullivan. That was a direction they were looking. Kevin O'Sullivan, I think, was looking for a way out of Gainesville because if you were in Omaha for LSU in Florida, that 3-game series, you know why Kevin O'Sullivan is looking to get out, because they just do not care. They just don't care. They sent 1,200 people to Omaha, which sounds great to some people that don't care at all about college baseball. We had 12,000 people there. So it's just different world. And Florida is not in the realm that Arkansas or A&M or Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Texas or Tennessee, they just travel better to everything. Florida's got very much like a sidewalk fan base, and they just, even though he's put together an incredible program there, they just don't care. And so he would have, I think, probably looked into it. LSU backed out. It's hard for me to sit there with Kevin O'Sullivan's resume and suggest that LSU wouldn't have been good under Kevin O'Sullivan. However, I can look at the last 2 years, meaning this past season where Florida was the last team in the field, and this year where they're 1-8 in SEC play and don't look like a tournament team, and suggest that maybe as far as the transfer portal and the NIL stuff goes, maybe Florida's not in the position to continue the run of dominance that O'Sullivan's put together over better than a decade. But with LSU's resources and commitment, it's hard to look at what Kevin O'Sullivan's done at Florida and suggest he wouldn't win a lot at LSU, just because I think there are a lot of coaches that can win a lot at LSU, and certainly Jay Johnson is one of them, and I'm really happy that he's here. I can't think of a coach I would rather have at LSU. I know everyone's going to immediately yell and scream and point at Tony Vitello. I'm pretty good with the guy that LSU's got. So that's where I stand on that. That's it for What If Wednesday here on this Wednesday. That After Work Week in the rearview mirror. Appreciate you hanging out with us here. We got a lot to do in hour number 2. We will close out hour number 1 with just some dollars and cents figures that are crazy. Like, we know how good the SEC's been in basketball this year, but they're setting more records over the last 2 weeks. We'll talk about it all when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show. This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
So there are folks that have differing opinions on conference allegiance, right? You all know someone, maybe it's you, that just cheers for the SEC no matter what. Pull for the SEC, that's my conference, chanting SEC at bowl games, like, I want our league to be the best. Not right or wrong, just how you feel. You got people like me that despise everyone in the SEC and never pulls for them at all. I want nothing but awful things for all the athletic programs in the SEC. That's just the way that I'm wired. Always been that way. I don't want good things for them, although I do understand that there are some benefits in your conference being strong from time to time. I want to take in all the benefits of the SEC being the strongest football league and the strongest baseball league. I also want to complain about the fact that everybody's really good and it's hard to win games. So it's just, there's a bit of a double-edged sword there. But it is financially beneficial for your conference to play a lot of games in the NCAA tournament. That is not debatable. And what you call every time your team plays in an NCAA tournament game, the conference gets credit for a unit. And a unit is a monetary value that changes over time. Right now, the units are about $2 million. Every time the SEC plays in a tournament game, the league gets $2 million to split within its 16 institutions. The record all time for units, meaning games played in an NCAA tournament, is the ACC in 2016. They played in 25 games that year. Jacob Beck, do you have any guess as to how many games the SEC will have played this year as of Sunday morning? 25 is the all-time record.
Let's see. There's 2 1 seeds, and they've.
You can do math?
I'm going to say 36.
35 as of Sunday morning. Now, it's guaranteed to be that Sunday morning.
Get that,
and you're going to play a 36th in the final. You're already, because you've got, so you're going to play 36 total. That's going to break the record by 11. And when you consider 36 times 2 is 78, you're talking about, or 36 times 2,
Hold on.
72.
There you go.
72. We'll get there. Math, not the most fun.
Nope.
$72 million the SEC will pull from this NCAA basketball tournament and divide among its peers. So while I have enjoyed watching the SEC lose and will be disappointed if an SEC team does, in fact, cut down the nets, I hope Houston or Duke gets it done. You can't argue against the fact that the SEC is raking in cash. I mean, you look at 72 divided by 16. Well, I guess it's divided by 17 because you're going to divide it with the conference in mind. So everybody getting 4.2 milli in the league for this run. It's, I mean, by any measure, and I guess to really punctuate it, one of the 2 SEC teams is going to have to win on Monday. But until you get to that, by any measure, this is the greatest season a conference has ever had in the history of college basketball. You look at the absolute demolition of the rest of the country that the SEC put on in November and December. It was unbelievable to watch the SEC in November and December. I know most of y'all weren't week to week watching that because it's the middle of football season and it's Christmas and all that kind of stuff, Thanksgiving, and not every game's on television, and you're not locked into basketball in this part of the world here in our Louisiana bubble in November and December. The SEC was wrecking people. And not like just going out there and taking care of TCU and Cal. Like the Blue Bloods were getting beat down by the SEC. Kansas, North Carolina getting beat. Houston getting beat. Gonzaga getting beat. Purdue getting beat. Like it was... And then you went out in that SEC ACC challenge and went 15-1. Do I have that right?
I think so.
I think the only game the SEC lost was Auburn at Cameron. I think every other team won. It may have been 14-2, but it was something absurd.
Yeah,
And
Auburn did lose.
I know that. I knew that for sure, but I don't know if there was another one.
I don't think so.
I know the first day when LSU played, LSU beat Florida State. The SEC went like 8 or 9-1, and it was. But I think they may have won the rest of it. It was just ridiculous. And then you get to the tournament, and you had 4 of the Elite 8, 2 of the Final 4.
I mean, you just look at Houston.
7 of the Sweet 16.
Just look at Houston and Duke. Those teams have a combined 7 losses, and I think 3 or 4 of them are from SEC teams.
It's an absolute clinic the SEC put on, and we understand that there were 2 teams that were left out of this whole dance, and LSU is very much one of them. And so, while it's interesting to sit here and talk about every SEC team getting $4.2 million because you're going to play 36 NCAA tournament games between 14 teams that got in, you realize that's your competition. And I would like to sit here and tell you, well, they're going to graduate all these guys and they'll be gone. But Tennessee has stayed afloat and has been awesome. And Alabama has stayed afloat and has been awesome. And Auburn is back in the Final Four for the second time in 4 years, and they've been awesome. So I don't know if Todd Golden's going to keep it going. I don't know if Texas A&M losing their coach and 8 seniors is going to be able to keep it going. But I know John Calipari is going to keep getting NBA players to go to Arkansas. Chris Beard's either going to be the coach at Ole Miss or A&M. Chris Jans has been at the tournament 3 years in a row, beg your pardon. So it stands to reason the SEC is going to be pretty good again next year. Pretty competitive again next year. So it's up to LSU to decide they want to join that party. And we feel like they've attempted to make that decision. They may have made the decision. Whether or not they can execute the decision is a whole nother thing. And yesterday we talked about the 2 transfer portal ads that LSU brought in this week, and there was another one earlier today. So we're going to pause for SportsCenter. We'll come back on the other side, and I'll tell you about the addition that LSU made today and how I think it's starting to shape this roster, that they're going to try to join this mega $1 million party that the SEC has been throwing for the last 3 weeks. So we'll do that after SportsCenter. If you missed any of today's show, catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. If you're looking for LSU football, Hunt on LSU. You search that. If you're looking for Saints football, Hunt on Saints. All of it right there at your fingertips. LSU and Louisiana Tech. Recap from last night. Opened our show today. Talked Saints draft. Can they get Mason Graham? Talked about that at 1:15, and we had What If Wednesday at 1:30. We still got plenty to do after SportsCenter, y'all. We're going to go into LSU's transfer portal ad in basketball. We've got our SEC basketball power rankings. We'll see if we can scrounge up some LSU football talk for you in the second hour as well. So lots and lots and lots to do. After work week's in the rearview mirror. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. We'll step aside for SportsCenter, get your national headlines. We'll be back with hour number 2 of the Wednesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.